The Retro Buzz starts right after this.
Hey guys, it's Friday, so you know what time it is. It's time for the Retro Buzz. And before we get into anything, we want to thank Arcade One Up. They came on as a sponsor, and you guys know we have the arcades, so let's take you and show you a little bit about it. And we want to thank Arcade One Up for their support. Now, kind of move along here. We've got Mr. Douglas Smith, Cool Toy himself. You still didn't get a haircut yet.
Still no haircut. Still not wearing a hat. Just proving to people that I do in fact have hair and a scalp underneath the hat, because people always assume that it's attached. But yeah, still no haircut. Haven't even shaved. I'm looking scruffy as always.
Awesome. And we also have Mr. Glenn Planamento. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Retro Buzz.
That thing just doesn't get old, does it?
It really doesn't. I mean, Glenn just created a top 40 hit, like right there. That's all you need to do these days.
Well, it is better than most of the stuff that we see on TV, right? And here.
Absolutely.
Yep, and unlike Doug, I am wearing a hat because I don't want to blind you with my bald head. So there we go.
And we also have a special guest with us. We've got Mr. Jim Drew from cbmstuff.com. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how are you?
Well, it's great to have you here. And I know Glenn has been just reveling in all this. He's been waiting for you to get on.
Once again, yeah. I'm a little schoolgirl once again. So Jim Drew used to have another company called Utilities Unlimited back in the 90s, where he did a lot of stuff for the Commodore 64 and the Amiga. He made things like the Sybil, which was a hardware disk copy. You know, games back then had a lot of hardware copy protection on the floppies. He also made the M-Plant board, which was a Commodore emulator, a Mac emulator, and also had a PC emulator for it. And it was really cool, you know, running Mac software faster than a Mac on a similar machine. And he makes new things today, like the SuperCard Pro here, which I happen to have one right here. And this little device lets you do is it actually lets you connect a floppy drive to it, and you could do what's called the magnetic flux copy. So even if there's copy protection on there, it doesn't matter. It makes an exact duplicate of the disk. And it does all these different formats, Amiga, IBM, TI, and you can also archive them. So instead of, you know, making a copy to a floppy, don't copy that floppy, was the old saying. But you can also back it up to like an SD card and make copies of it. So, and Jim, I know, has been also tinkering with making little modifications to the Arcade One Up. Hopefully we can go into a little bit about that as well and see what Jim's been doing. So Jim, thanks for coming on to the Retro Buzz.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, real quick, just so people can get more of a background on you than my blabbing mouth, you want to tell us a little bit how you got started with the whole thing? I mean, you obviously did stuff with the Amiga and the Commodore 64 back then. Was that your first forte into making products, or was there something before that?
In 1977, believe it or not, my dad was friends with people at Commodore, and I don't know what the real association is. I need to ask him. He's still alive, so. But I know that he knew the people back in the 70s because he was museum director and curator, and he was getting Commodore office furniture. If you didn't know that, they made desks and calculators, things like that. He ended up getting a Commodore PET 2001 when they were first released. And so it was brought home, and I was probably 12 years old, I think, at the time. And he said, here, write the software to, keep track of 1 million items in the museum using an 8K machine one with cassette tape. So obviously that wasn't something that's going to happen. But I learned, programming on it. And so a few years later, I started actually making some products for the PET computers. And that's kind of where I got started. And then in '83, I worked for Commodore in Portland, Oregon, and for about 8-9 months before I went on my own and started doing software and hardware.
You actually were working at Commodore for a while. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's a company called Computron Business Systems in downtown Portland, Oregon, and it was headquarters for Commodore Service. And so my first job there was at Commodore Service. And then I started handling some of the educational accounts for the state of Oregon for all the school districts. So because I knew the Commodores pretty well, and so they say, hey, would you figure out how many computers you need for this school and all this stuff? So I kind of did that as well. But the Commodore Service job was my first real job, and that was an interesting time because that's when we were replacing motherboards and sparkle infected 64s and aligning disk drives and all kinds of stuff like that.
So then after that, you did a Steve Wozniak, and you left Commodore to start Utilities Unlimited. Is that what happened?
Well, no, geez, Utilities Unlimited was a long, long story. So what happened is that I started writing some disk copying software and started marketing it. And as people approached me saying, hey, would you like to, have us sold under our company? I was like, all right, we'll see how that goes. And of course, that didn't go so well. And then a company called Megasoft, which was a popular company back in the day, they contacted me, and I ended up doing a whole bunch of stuff for them. I did, like 60 different programs like that for them. And that company ended up turning into Utilities Unlimited. There was a product that they had purchased called the Shadow, which was it was a fiasco. And it tainted their reputation so bad that he did a nice corporate shift and made Utilities Unlimited, and then shortly thereafter he sold it. And so keeping me on board, the new owners gave me a percentage of the company, and that's pretty much how I was with Utilities Unlimited at that point. And then we moved to Arizona from Oregon in 1991. So ever since then we're doing stuff for the Amiga. It's kind of funny because we moved from 91, that was kind of at the tail end of the Commodore 64 era. And so we were on the fence, like, what do we do? Because we were already doing Amiga stuff. We had done SuperCard for the Amiga, and like we said, we were doing, I hadn't done Sybil yet. Sybil was an Arizona product. But there was like Kickstart board and a switcher and things like this we had done for the Amiga. But we were thinking, what should we do next? So it was basically a coin toss between a Nintendo cartridge copier or a new Amiga product. And after the owners contacted Nintendo, we did Amiga.
Sure, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was quick too. I'm sure it was like a 5-minute job. Okay. Because I remember the owner, she was a lady, and her husband owned the company, and she's like, okay, well, we're doing Amiga. So yeah, so then we ended up moving to Arizona, and gosh, there's such a long history of Utilities Unlimited with the things that we did. It's like Sybil. Do you know the history behind Sybil at all, Glenn?
I don't know the history about it. I know I owned it, and I know I was using it, but I don't know the history of it.
I wanted to be able to read and write every kind of disk format there was. And Macintosh disks, the 400 and 800K floppy drives, are variable speed drive. And so you can't read them with a stock Amiga. But I figured out that if you use the Genlock port, which is the video port on the Amiga, you can take over the timing of the computer, and then I can adjust the clock of the entire computer. And so I could change the frequency which Paula, which is the disk controller, runs at. So I could actually read and write any of the variable speed zones on the Mac floppy, which was great. It also allowed us to do imaging of software for the first time. So we could actually do a disk image and keep it on your hard drive instead of having to make floppies with floppies, So it's kind of like Supercar Pro is now. We can have images. So a guy named Joe Fenton, he contacted me and said, hey, I would like to try to integrate this into AMAX. And I'm like, well, I'm already looking at it right now because I like to do the same thing. So we collaborated on some stuff, and I was able to make some patches, and he helped make patches for it. And so I could actually read and write through AMAX directly on an Amiga floppy drive.
Real quick, AMAX was a ReadySoft product that you connected to your Amiga to read and run Macintosh software, black and white Mac Classic software, right?
Mac Plus, right. And they had an actual interface that plugged into the disk drive port, had ROMs, and it required a real Mac floppy drive to run.
Right,
so you could
right.
But I wanted to use the Amiga drive. Now, ReadySoft is in the real ReadySoft, like Dragon's Lair and all that stuff. So it's the same company. And so, make a long story short, ReadySoft contacted us and said, hey, we'd like to license this and have you make them for us. And so it's okay, great. We'll make a bunch of them that you guys can detect in your software. And that way they have to purchase the new version of AMAX. They just can't use the old one. It's like, to make money on the deal. And so we came into this agreement, got everything done, had the first 1,000 units sitting there. And then ReadySoft said, we're not interested anymore. You can just keep them.
Ouch.
Burn.
What?
And I thought, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So that's how Implant became to be. I was so mad about what ReadySoft had done.
I'll show you guys.
I said, I'm going to make a full color multitasking Macintosh simulation. And so I talked to Joe again.
Did you ever?
I said, hey, you know the Mac pretty good. How would you like to come out here into Arizona and we'll work on this project and we'll kick the crap out of ReadySoft? He said, okay. So that's how Implant came to be. It had nothing to do with anything other than basically revenge on ReadySoft.
And you know what? I'm glad I just heard this story, Jim, because I remember there was a huge thing with ReadySoft and you guys, like they were like pissed. So this is the backstory I didn't know. So they actually ordered this product from you guys, shafted you for it, and you came back with a product that was like 10 times better, easily 10 times better than they had. Full color Mac, multitasking system.
Right. Yep. And it would be another year before they would release AMAX 4, which was their color version. And that I don't think they ever got multitasking.
No, well, it sucked.
But you know what? I had a lot of respect for Simon Douglas because we looked at his code, of course, to find out if he was taking stuff from us. And it wasn't. It was all his stuff. So I was pretty impressed with that fact but he obviously knew Mac anyway because he did the first one. So I was pretty impressed with that there was no theft going on with that. Unlike later people with emulations and stuff. So
shifting some shapes, perhaps?
Yeah. That's in fact, the first time we looked at that, I actually talked to Simon Douglas about that and said, well, 60% of your code is in another product right now. So you might want to talk to them about it.
Ouch.
The other 40 is mine. Yeah, so so we all
people
live and
don't
learn.
know. Yep, there was a program, a freeware program called Shapeshifter that was released, and it turned out that it was a freeware program, but the code was kind of borrowed from other places, shall we say.
So we got an attorney involved in the whole 9 yards, but so we learned, unfortunately, that unlike today, it's very difficult to go after anybody overseas back in the the 90s. So there was a company that actually stole my SuperCard Amy hardware and software in the UK, and they relabeled it as Mac 2, and which is kind of funny. And we actually took them to court, and we won. And
nice.
But we got literally what we got out of it was $50,000 worth of attorney bills, and we got a box of about $1,800 worth of product, and that was the recourse and the thing. And so by that time the damage had already been done. With software and hardware, software mostly, being with hardware to an extent, there's a window of opportunity to sell things in, and so we were outside that window anyway. So it basically killed us, and that's kind of what happened with the Shapeshifter thing too. Is it kind of killed us, but I look at it in the end, we were at the end of Commodore anyway, and it was all going downhill, and we had moved over to the PC platform, and we had made Fusion after Utilities Limited had gone away in '96. And so we made Fusion for the Amiga, then we made Fusion for the PC, and so.
And just so you know, so our audience knows, Fusion was also a Mac emulator, but that was now made for the PC.
Yeah, so Fusion was originally made for the Amiga. So after Utilities Unlimited went out of business because of this shapeshifter and all this other, basically the end of the Amiga anyway, we moved the code over to the PC. And so we made a PC version of Fusion, which was the latest and greatest Mac emulator for the PC. And it was really, really popular, especially in Japan, because Apple didn't have any small Macs. Their laptops were huge still. And so there was, Sony had a Vaio that was very small, and Toshiba had a little machine called Libretto, and it was the size of a VHS tape, literally, with a flip-up screen. And it was hugely popular in Japan because it was so small. And so you could run Fusion on it, and you could run all of your Mac software on your little tiny Libretto. And it was so popular that we released the demo version on downloads.com, which was relatively new back then. And we crashed their server in the first day.
Nice.
Had 1 million downloads in the first day. Yeah,
Because it worked so well. I mean, PC running a Mac, so for people that think that was possible, and it did, and it ran well.
Yeah, it did. It ran really well. In fact, it ran faster than any Mac you could run on a standard, like a Libretto size CPU. So it ran good. So I guess if you're into Mac productivity like that, like they are, I mean, I went to Macworld a couple of times promoting it for a company called Open Technologies that was a distributor there for it. And I was amazed, actually, at the response to that product in Japan.
So where did your education from? I mean, what did you go to school for? Because obviously you're very talented, not only on the hardware end, but the software end. So where did you get your education for everything?
Radio Shack, and schooling, of course. But it's one of the things that.
Now, I'm sorry, Jim. For once again, for people that know what Radio Shack is, it was a store that you go to buy electronics. Okay, it's like the Toys R Us for geeks. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much.
Our stereo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Forrest Mims books when I was a young kid, and then of course into high school and college stuff. But I kind of wish I would have stayed a little more in schooling and got a master's. But then again, I mean, literally, I started working right out of high school, so it's one of those things I just was constantly working, and I've not stopped since then. Really, I've never taken much of a break. Can ask my wife. Yeah, still every day at 3:30 in the morning when I go to bed, working on stuff.
Long hours.
Yeah, but I do a lot of different things though. I do a lot of contract stuff, and like I said, I've got a real full-time day job, which is doing contract work and running a company that does UAV products. So that's what I got into later on. So.
And you have I know we've talked a couple times in the past. You're always running the other way, and I keep finding you, and you run and you duck and you curve, but I always find you, Jim. So we were talking one time. And, you said, okay, Glenn, I can't run anymore. Just ask you a question. And you were working on some newer stuff, like the arcade one-ups. Do you have anything you want to talk to about that?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's literally, I have boards done sitting here in boxes I could actually ship. I just have been busy with doing a bunch of stuff. So for the arcade one-up, I did, for the original ones, like arcade Asteroids and all those original ones with the first boards they had out, there was an issue with using USB, and so we could have a serial interface for it. So I actually made a USB interface board for it that lets you have the keyboard function. One of the things you had to do is you had to like power off and then plug the thing in and then power back up and all that. It drove me nuts. That drove me nuts personally immediately. So that's pretty much how everything I make, it comes to be anyways, that I need something. So I made an interface that, you can hot plug a keyboard into or any kind of USB device, and it powers up immediately. So I did that.
That was for the 12-in-1. We try to access the main menu type of thing and do that little.
Right.
So this is the guy that showed the video of soldering the USB cable to the board.
Well, no, see, I made mine a little smarter than that. I've seen that before. So my board, should have gotten one. My board basically is a little tiny board, and it has 4 holes in it that are round that are just happen to be the right size to sit over top of the USB little connector where you've got to solder those normally. And so my cable is soldered to this board, and then you lay this over top of it, and then you simply just put a solder block, blip, 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 and it's done.
I like
So you don't have
simple.
to do that. Yeah, simple's good.
That other guy that was doing it kind of made me nervous because it's like I was waiting for him to like solder everything together, but yours sounds simpler. You could just drop it on the back.
It was cool too because with the Arcade 1-Up stuff, they put those 4 pads for the USB on the edge of the board.
Yeah.
Close to the edge of the board. So literally when I made the board so that it just drops in place, so it can't shift left or right, it just sits in place and you've got solder blobs. And the easiest way to do it actually is to put a small blob on each one of those little pads, put this on top of it, and just heat each one of them when you're done. So you don't have a problem with solder dripping on the board someplace or like an excessive amount. That's the problem with the cabling is you're trying to put solder, hold the cable, you got to stand on one foot and, wax on the side of your car and sacrifice the chicken and
hold your breath. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is a lot easier.
Being an engineer, if you don't burn your fingers on a soldering iron, that's your passage, right?
No,
that's your rite of passage.
No. See, I got over that a long time ago. That's like when I'm coding now, it just drives me nuts. Like, we used to be all command line jockeys back in the day, right? For everything. Oh man, everything to me has got to be GUI interface or I can't do it. I just can't stand typing anymore. I mean, I type enough for doing code. I don't want to have to learn 5 million little pieces of code fragments you got to type into a command line to compile something. Yeah. So I'd rather push a button and it's done. So, now when I build products, it's basically, it better be like super duper foolproof because I think the reason why I've learned that is because the technical support. Because I learned that if you make something like that, your tech support is like non-existent really.
Yeah.
Like the big companies would have non-existent customer service.
Like what companies?
Yeah, any big company.
Oh.
I'm going to tell you right now, I have Cablevision, which is Optimum out here. You call them, first you're on hold for like half an hour. Then when you get someone, you can't understand them.
Right.
And they're like, hold please. Don't put me in hold. I've been on hold for like 2 hours already. And then they just disconnect you, so it's whatever.
Right. Yeah, so I learned that really back with the Amiga stuff because when I designed the implant board, I designed it literally, and we showed this at actually trade shows, Pasadena, and also in New York City. New York City was a good one. So we had a Amiga 4000 open, and I was plugging the implant board in and pulling it out with power on constantly.
Yeah, I remember that. Our people are freaking out.
And so I'm like, look, if you can't build a product that can do this, then you're going to have a technical support nightmare because that's really what happens. And so on that premise, let me tell you a quick story about a tech support on the implant board that I thought was kind of funny. So this guy called and I went through this information on this guy and all the stuff he had. And it's like, okay, 2 hours spent on the phone with this guy trying to figure out why we couldn't get his Mac to run. And I finally said, look, there's got to be something wrong with the board. And let's just send the board back, take it out of your computer, send it back, and we'll give you another board. He goes, well, it's not been put in the computer yet. I was like, what? Because, I want to see if the software works before I put the board in. And so I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So it's one of those things where at that point in my life, I was like, yeah, I really need to work on things a little bit better to reduce my headache when it comes to this stuff. And the implant board was one of the first things I had done where literally I had buffered it so you could pull it in and out constantly. It wouldn't cause a problem with it. And everything I built nowadays is that way. So all my CBM stuff, all my UAV products, everything that we manufacture, we offer a lifetime warranty, period. So, because I know that it's that good of a product that it's not going to get destroyed by, user
error. I have these and they haven't broken yet. So that's a testament.
There you go. There's a testament right there.
It's a testimony because Glenn would have normally broke it by now.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's probably been fire involved, the police department, and a lot of things happen.
Yep.
Yep. They know me. They all know me around here. So I usually steal all the time here. Do you guys have to say anything you want to talk about? Or am I going to keep babbing? Because I can keep babbing.
No, I had a question for Jim. So,
yeah.
Jim, you're a bit of a Renaissance man. You said you've kind of dabbled in all sorts of things, and I saw in your profile that you mentioned working with NASA and Hollywood studios and things like that, special effects department. You want to give us a little backstory and history on those type of things?
Sure. So, because of the implant board, we got ends with Hollywood. So, the implant board's a Macintosh emulation, and back in the day, so this is going to be early 90s, the most common, probably still today a little bit, means of doing post-production work was called an Avid video studio.
Yep.
And that was run on a Macintosh.
Mhm.
And so Avid video stations, the whole studios themselves, they were actually rented to production studios like Amblin Entertainment, other companies that were back in the day, smaller companies. And they had to spend like $20,000 a day to rent these studios for doing post-production work. Well, somebody figured out pretty quick that you could get an Amiga 4000 or a 3000 with an implant board, and you could run Avid video software substantially faster than you could on a real Mac. And so they started buying full Amiga systems just so they could do post-production work. And of course, they were already into that because of things like Babylon 5 and all that stuff they were doing, with Lightwave and the toaster and all that stuff. So it wasn't a foreign thing to them. It's just they didn't really know they could do Mac stuff so much. And so that's how I kind of got into that whole thing. So I ended up meeting a lot of people in Hollywood for post-production work. Tony Alderson was a good friend. He's passed away now. He's the guy that did special effects for like Last Action Hero and stuff like that. So if you take a look at, there's a couple movies. Cyber Tracker is one that's got credits for the implant board and me in it. And there's a couple of them smaller movies too that Tony had worked on as well. And so they actually use implant boards quite a bit with Mac to run Avid video studios. So, and the NASA stuff is dealing with, well, it's funny. So NASA kind of goes back to 1987 or 88 when they were first working on the Mars rover project. And they had asked me a bunch of questions about the Amiga for doing multitasking and stuff, because unbeknownst to me until later, they actually used the Amiga 500 for doing some of the test coding for the wheels when they were doing separate tasks for each one of the wheels for the rover. So that was an interesting thing. That's my introduction to them. And then later on with the UAV industry, I've done some stuff with them as well.
So basically, they're using Amigas to run Mac software better than on the Macs. And then NASA is using Amigas as well.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know it could be this way. It was faster than a Macintosh, running its own native software, and still multitasking with the Amigas. Is that what you did? Is this shit telling me here?
Yeah. It's amazing, huh? Who knew?
Yeah, I wish
Not
somebody.
to me, but to my two co-hosts, I hope it is.
Yeah, well, I wish somebody would have told my college professor that, because I was formerly trained on Avid in college on a Macintosh.
Oh,
I hate
it. Yeah. So so because of I replaced a lot of the Mac OS because some of it was required to get it sort of be cooperative with the Amiga. So the thing that was focused on a lot was the mathematics and the Mac. So they've got it's called Pac 4 and Pac 5, which is their transcendental math functions, and those are used for doing cosine, cosine, all the different types of trigonomic functions and such. And so those got replaced with routines that call the FPU directly. And so if you take a look at benchmark programs like speedometer and stuff, you're going to find that our math scores are like huge compared to a real Mac. And so those were actually used on things like Photoshop, KTP Bryce for rendering, Avid, any kind of thing dealing with rendering or ray tracing or basically anything to move data on the screen even was going to be hugely accelerated. And so they found that with Avid systems, they could actually run it smoother, faster than a real Mac would. Even like the Quadra 840 AV, which was the premier machine for doing the Avid system, was that. And so if you had an Amiga 4000, you basically had faster than the Avid system on the 840 AV, which is a 40 megahertz 040, when the 4000 is only 25 megahertz 040. So a huge difference in performance-wise. So those guys, if you're spending literally $20,000 a day for renting a studio, and now you switched over to buy 2 or 3 Amigas with toasters and fully maxed out for that price for one day, obviously it makes good financial system for them, and they could also reuse the system over and over again for every project they had. So Hollywood used Amiga a lot. NASA used it a lot, as we know. We've seen systems pop up on eBay and stuff that were property of NASA, and some backstories on those. There's a lot of people that used them and that knew. It just, unfortunately, because of Commodore's management, that level of knowledge for everybody. Didn't really get out there, unfortunately. Apple knew about it because
they didn't want anybody else to know about it.
Yeah, Apple knew about it.
That this show is here to chronicle this information. That's what this is here about. You're putting information out that people didn't know.
Your voice changer's still on.
Voice changer's on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Your voice changer's still on.
I was that excited, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
Why
again, Glenn?
Go ahead, do that again. Say whatever you're saying.
I was just going to say that, that's the whole point of this show, is to kind of chronicle the information that would have been lost until the meteor comes down and wipes out the internet, because we get all wiped out from a meteor. But the knowledge you're sharing here is stuff that was basically lost more or less to history. Like I said, Apple knew, and that's why Apple kept coming after you guys to kind of squish you, because you were basically giving a better Mac experience than on a Mac. Hollywood was using it cheaper. They had Babylon 5. They had Sequest. They had a lot of shows that used the Amiga. Films used the Amiga. And like I said, it was used a lot more than people realized, because it was inexpensive, extremely high performance, and it was multitasking.
Yeah. So people ask me, what did Apple think about you? And literally, I went to Apple. I went to Cupertino, and I met with John Scully and the group of engineers there. And they full well knew about Implant, of course. And my pitch was I wanted to license the ROMs, really, for the machines. And their only concern, really, to Apple were two things. One was the perceived value of what we were doing. Were we actually tarnishing the Apple's name because of the fact that we had maybe some problems running certain software or something? So that was their big concern. The second concern was speed-wise. They want to make sure that we weren't making the Mac seem to be a slow machine. And so I quickly addressed those concerns, saying, well, I said, you've got a Quadra, you've got a Centris, you've got Mac 2, Mac 2 CX, SI, CI. You've got all these different models, and your operating system is catered to every single one of those models specifically. And our system's got a better compatibility than what you have, because I can run all of those operating systems and ROMs on one board. And so that ended that whole thing. It's compatibility-wise, so we can run more software than any single Mac model, period. And speed-wise, then of course I brought up the benchmarks. So they can't argue with either one of those facts. But I was surprised. They did not try to suppress it at all.
Because Steve Jobs wasn't there at the time, right?
No, he was gone. No, Scully was there. That's who I met with.
That's why Apple sucked at the time. It's just called spade a spade.
I guess I skated in at the perfect time, I guess. Yeah. But no, they didn't actually try to suppress us. They didn't try to do anything. They didn't threaten, nothing. I was very surprised, actually. I was expecting to go there with, let out in handcuffs or something.
Yeah.
But
did they license the ROMs to you?
Oh, no. They're like, no, we're never going to do that. So good luck with that. And so what was interesting is that Apple service centers at the time, they were making a gazillion dollars because they were charging outrageous amounts for ROMs. They were charging like $400 for a set of ROMs. Our board was only $299, and so it was like more for the ROMs than the board. And then Apple put the hammer down on service centers. They were not allowed to sell any ROMs anymore at all. So they were trying to squish it that way. And so, but the problem was with that is that literally you could put in a SIM, because we had dip sockets and SIM sockets on the implant board. So you could literally dump any Mac model. So you could go to, your local, refurb store and buy a Mac 2, which was pretty inexpensive at the time, and you could get ROMs out of it. You buy the whole machine for $100 instead of, spending, $400 a set of ROMs. So they really couldn't do anything about it. The cat was out of the bag, because I talked to Apple probably 8 months or so after Implant got released. So it was a long time before I actually had a meeting with them. So,
who was the, aside from like NASA, I mean, who were the big people buying the Implant board? It sounds like a lot of companies. I didn't think about that. I know people like me were buying it, but I didn't realize actual companies were buying them.
Yeah, we saw a lot of companies. And then there was a company, gosh, I don't remember, Creative Computers. Remember them back in the day?
Yes, sure do.
Okay. So we sold a lot of implant boards to them, and they were actually going and selling to other companies. And so Creative is a bunch of that were working out the deal with Commodore and us. So Commodore was scared to death of Apple. Okay, and I think Apple might have done something had Commodore actually licensed this thing. But so Commodore, I might have met with John DeLulu, who was the CEO of Commodore back then, and this was 90, I think 3 or 94, no, 93, and we worked out a deal where there would be an implant A4000 bundle from Commodore as a Commodore product, and it would be sold to studios and things like that needed them, and Commodore chickened out at the last second. But Creative Computers did not. So Creative Computers offered a A4000 implant combo, and they sold a lot of them. We sold a lot of boards to them, and they went to various companies. Now I don't know where they all went, because I really didn't get much in the way of tech support from people, because it seemed to be okay, by the time that we were up at that stage when the 4000 was working with it and stuff. But I think that, I sold thousands of boards. I don't know how many we sold total. I stopped taking count at, we used to hand write on every implant board the number. And one day I was in helping write out boards. When I got to 10,000, I quit. I didn't do it anymore. So I have no idea how many past 10,000 we sold, but we sold a lot of the implant boards.
And if I remember right, the Mac software was on one 880K floppy, right?
Back in the day, yeah, it was. And on the original OS, the 6 point whatever, the early 6s. And then it was just like the PC with Windows, where you've got, 3 floppies, and then it's 5 floppies, and it's 11 floppies, and then now it's a CD because you can't put it on enough floppies. So, OS 8.1 is an installer CD, and they have what's called the Universal Install CD, which was smart finally. That has every system software for every Mac model, instead of having a different system software for every Mac that was out there, which is crazy. That's what Apple really did. People don't get that, which is the biggest headache I had with the Mac emulation for tech support was whatever ROM you put into the system, you had to have the exact same Mac system software. So if you had a Mac 2 CI ROM, you had to have Mac 2 CI system software. You couldn't run a Mac 2X or a Mac 2 SI or any other type of system software. It wasn't compatible. You had to have the matching set. And finally, Apple got smart, I think because of their own technical support, woes, that they made a universal installer that you just say, install for everything, and it did. Of course, it wasted a lot of disk space, but who cares back, then really. You've got bigger hard drives now.
Now, have you done anything with more like newer systems? Sega Genesis, you said you were going to do an NES cart, but that didn't happen. Did you do anything more in the gaming field?
No. I actually was a beta tester for the PlayStation 1 for the US market. In fact, that was kind of neat actually, because I got it from Japan, obviously, and I had mine about 6 months or so before we got them in the US. So I did some testing, but that was about my only real extent into gaming as far as that goes. I'm not much of a gamer. So my son's a gamer. He's like one of these online wizards that gets watched on Twitch and stuff.
So you got a game of choice that he prefers, or?
I don't have a clue what it is today. So back when he was in high school, he was doing League of Legends and various different things. So I know he went through a Fortnite phase, and so he didn't do the Call of Duty thing though, which is kind of surprising. But so I don't know what he's doing now. I'll have to ask him. In fact, he might be watching. So
He's probably sitting there going, like, "Really, Dad? Really?" He's like, "You don't know what I play?"
No clue. He's a senior at ASU this year, so he's to finish school. So I have no idea.
So he has plenty of time to play video games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's what we always found in college.
It's funny, it's interesting that he learned that first year of college is all play, second year is kind of play, third year is kind of play. This last year, he's like, holy mackerel, I actually have to do work now.
Yeah, got to play catch up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, play catch up. So that's where he is now, and I'm assuming that he's probably playing some new fangled game that I've never heard of before.
So Jim, you actually have a question here that we have pulled up here. It says from Cami. I wonder how Jim felt about Shapeshifter being able to run Mac OS on an Amiga without any additional hardware.
Yeah, I'm actually sending her a text on that because she's definitely much open to translate. But Jim.
Okay, so I made Fusion, which is the same thing, and but it could use the implant board if you had it. And so the implant board itself was like part of a real Mac. Basically, I had the same VIAs that a Mac has, the same serial chip, the same SCSI chip. So I had a lot of Mac hardware, on it. So you could run faster as a result of that. So if you had an implant board running my Fusion software, it runs faster than any kind of software-only solution because you can pawn off a lot of the hardware responsibilities onto the board itself. So, but how I felt about it? Well, obviously, how I felt about it. So, so.
And actually, on that implant board, you threw basically the kitchen sink on that board, right? You had timers, you had relay, all this stuff on that board.
Yeah, there was 3 VIA chips, and the Mac used 2, and there's a third one we put on there, and we actually used it for the PC emulation as well. So there was timers on there. There was a SCSI interface. There was serial interface for the 85C30s, which is the AppleTalk ports, and then we made Amiga-sided devices for that. So we ran a BBS for Utilities Unlimited on an Amiga 2000 with an implant board, and it was a 2-line BBS, and I was able to run each modem off of each one of the ports on that board, which was great. So you have 2 people calling at the same time. Woo!
Right. And actually, you also had the Apple serial ports on the back. So you could technically connect the implant Amiga to an actual Apple network, right? You had AppleTalk ports.
Absolutely. Yeah, AppleTalk. Yeah, and that's one of the things that they had done in the studios, of course, is that they had run all the machines tied together to real Macs as well, and so they could share their data between everybody. And at some point, I know that they have, much like they did with the Lightwave software, where they had redistributive rendering, they could actually have parts of it being rendered by one machine and another machine and another machine, and they all get pulled back into the master type of thing. So yeah, the AppleTalk ports worked, and they were high speed for back in the day. They were 230 kilobaud, which was fast back then.
Was that your biggest, I guess, hardware project and sales product? Because I know you made Sybil, you got the SuperCard Pro, you have all those other things you made. Was the implant board like the pinnacle product you guys had done, sold the most, had the most, praise, if you will?
Yeah, probably. As far as monetary goes, as far as how much money we spent, how much money we got, yeah, definitely implant, because it was an expensive piece of hardware. They were costing us a bunch of money to make, and we were making a lot of money on them as well. So as far as revenue is concerned, yeah, implant board was probably the biggest. As far as volume, no. SuperCard definitely was the most. And SuperCard for the 1541 back in the Commodore days, the 64 days, was also the most. We sold 50-some thousand of those that I know of, because I started kind of keeping track back then as well. So there's a lot of hardware. Nowadays, I mean, it's a decent business with CBM stuff. I mean, I have a lot of new old stock product though too. Like I still have original SuperCard Plus boards from back in the day, and people still buy them, which was neat, And it's kind of funny how I got back into this whole thing. So we were talking before we were on air about a little bit of history and stuff. So I'll touch on that real quick. Basically, from 1983 until about 2001, my full-time day job was developing Commodore hardware and software. That's what I did every single day. And so that's what I was paid to do. And so from 2001 to about 2005 or so, 2006, I played paintball professionally. I traveled the world and played paintball. And I developed electronics for all the different markers that are out there, and electronics for the hoppers and stuff like that. And then I'd always been an RC guy. And so when the UAV industry started really picking up in about 2004, 2005, I got asked to join in doing some projects, and that kind of snowballed into a company that I've created that develops UAV products right now. That's my full-time day job, really, is that. And so that's kind of a little bit of a history of where I've been. And so nowadays, man, I got back into this only because of the theft aspect of things again, unfortunately. In 2012, I got an email from somebody saying, hey, I'd like to get the software for your SuperCard Plus board that I just got on eBay. I was like, oh, interesting. I'm curious to see, what they're worth now. And it turns out that somebody had been, from the UK, had been producing and selling SuperCard Plus boards for years and selling on eBay. And
wow.
So when I found that out, of course, then I got to get an attorney and got to go through the whole thing. And so they were quick, though. I basically sent an email, said stop. And I said, okay. And then that was it. And then so I started looking at the market again. I thought, you know
I
what?
wish that would work for me. I got
Oh, and
people
I'll tell you,
cloning my spinners and
I was
trackballs, man,
stunned.
and we can't stop them at all.
Yeah, yeah. I was stunned actually, and so yeah, I started looking into it again, and I thought, maybe I should dabble a little bit back in this again. I'm not so burned out anymore, because I spent almost 30 years doing it. It's a long time to be doing this stuff, and so I got back into it, and then I really got back into it, and it's like one of those things that with Commodore, for whatever reason, no matter how far you try to go away from it, it just sucks you back in. It's like this vortex, So from 1977 until today, still, it's Commodore's, part of my life.
And you definitely with Commodore line. Did you do anything ever with the Atari line, or no?
No, my only exposure to Atari, nothing with the 400, 800 ever, other than playing some games at the local Toys R Us one day. They had a demo set up. Star Raider, I think, is what I was playing, which is kind of neat. The Atari ST, I started looking at a little bit, and then it turns out that their disk drive controller is integrated. It's a WD-1772 chip, which is IBM PC type of chip. And I was like, there's no way to really make something that's going to be easy to make and inexpensive to make. So I opted not to do that. Ironically, though, the Atari ST user group was good friends with the Amiga user group because the Amiga people could copy everything Atari ST. So that's why they were friends. So, but no, I really didn't sway too much. The PC was about as far away as I got, from Amiga stuff and from Commodore stuff in general. I just don't have any desire to work on anything else. I'm not a big fan of Linux stuff at all. I have used it quite a bit recently because it's easier now than it was back in the day. Because, like I said, I refuse to be a command line jockey anymore. So now with all the Raspbian and stuff like that, I like that stuff. So it's usable for me now.
Now,
how did you feel when Commodore basically overnight was gone?
Well, it was overnight for a lot of people. It certainly wasn't overnight for us. We knew long before. You talk to anybody in Commodore, you talk to Dave Haney and Bill Hurd and Carolyn Shuttner and all the people that I dealt with back in the day. Everybody knew it was coming, and it wasn't like some big shock. The big shock was how long it lasted, actually. So that, to me, was something that had to happen because you just couldn't strain it on anymore. And I was hoping, though, that somebody like SCOM, development, would get it and then run with it, but nobody was able to pick it up and actually, proceed with it. And it's unfortunate because we all know it's a great operating system. And I can imagine today how the Amiga would actually be more like, how Mac OS is as far as usability and things like that. And I don't know, it's just an unfortunate thing. Multitasking, it's such groundbreaking stuff they had back in the day. And all the engineers were, very good people at thinking of future-proofing things. And so it's unfortunate to me. I like to have seen, Dave Haney and Bill and all those guys, had an opportunity to move forward with a new platform. And I just can only imagine how good it would be today if they were still doing it. So it's an unfortunate thing for all of us, really, as humans.
As a species, like kids say, we'll never know what that machine has. It does suck.
Yeah. Instead, you're stuck, having to learn Avid video on a real Mac.
Yeah. It was terrible. It was terrible. I hated every minute of it. I did.
Sorry,
So,
I'm looking through the chat here.
That's okay. I would say with things are now, do you have any future plans, any new products you're working on that you can maybe tell us about, or it's just really you're just maintaining what you have at the moment?
Well, during this little lapse of a judgment of people out there running around getting infected with COVID, I've been staying home. And as a result of that, I have 11 brand new products that I've done or finished that I can actually go to market with for Commodore stuff, which is good. My problem is, and you know this from my experience and history as well as other things, I do a lot of things all the time. And when I get sidetracked with something, that thing stays on a burner somewhere, right? And then that stays on a burner, and that stays on a burner. So I got lots of fires everywhere. And so during this time of lockdown, I was able to go back and finalize a lot of these things, which is good for me because it's one of the things that I don't like, but it happens. If you're an engineer and you get drawn away from one thing to the other, or the market shifts, there's a lot of reasons why you do these things, or you sell it. And that's the biggest downfall for me from the public's eye, I think, in a way, is that there's a lot of products that I've done that I just sold just to get rid of because I was tired of dealing with it or whatever. And so, oh man, the animosity I get for doing that. I mean, it's a good business decision on my part, but some things I've done that in the past, like, oh, I get hell for that. But that's just part of doing business. In the end, what I had done before really was a business, and that was my livelihood. And so you've got to make decisions that are hard for maybe some of your people that you deal with, but you have to do those things. So I hope to finish up more products. Maybe I'll go look back now. We've had this chat about the arcade one-up stuff, and maybe release that stuff out finally. I know people still want it because I still get emails from people. I had done some things like, well, you're the king of the spinners and joysticks and wheels and stuff like that. So, back then I was looking at doing some replacement stuff, but when I saw what you had done, it's like, oh, that's yours. I don't want to deal with that.
You were actually working on a spinner replacement, weren't you?
I did. I had a spinner replacement.
Yeah.
Actually, the spinner replacement is not a big deal because what you did was nice, but the trackball replacement thing, because I had done was all machined and stuff, machined with ball bearings, and I went all crazy because I'm a huge trackball junkie when it comes to like missile command and things like that. So my trackball has got to be perfect, right? So that's why I had done this, and so I had made prototypes, and I'd done all the CAD data for it, all stuff, and got quotes and the whole 9 yards. And then you did yours. I'm like, I don't know if anybody's gonna want an $80 trackball because it's whiz bang with 3 ball bearings per axis and all this stuff. But so I've done quite a few little things like that.
And it could have caused market confusion because we look so similar. People would have known which device it was. And
I thought, yours is fine. Yours is way better than the stock stuff anyway. So that's perfect at that point. I'm finicky, and you're finicky too, which is why you did what you did. Obviously the stock spinner that they originally came with arcade one-up machines wasn't well thought out. I thought maybe, but it
was a little misstep. But the one they replaced it with was great. The second version of it was great, right?
Which was a real spinner instead of being a rotary encoder. But I understand why they did the rotary encoder thing. It's cheap, it's easy, and it works. And
well, they pulled it out of all those old TVs that went to the dump. They got the channel clicker thing, and they put it right in there, right?
Yeah. When I first spun that thing, I went like this, and I went, and I thought, what on earth? And so then I got
chewing gum underneath this.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I had the machine upright and on for more than 2-3 minutes, and then before it was completely ripped apart. Figure out what the heck was going on.
When I turned that the first time, I thought my father was going to hit me saying, you don't click the channels that quick. You go one at a time.
Oh.
Yeah, I tell you what, your parents knew too when you're flipping too fast because that thing made a
lot. Oh, damn. Bang. You got it all the time. One at a time. One at a time.
Yeah. Remember the old remotes too? Cling, make a big noise.
Oh,
yeah. Loud rattle. Oh, yeah.
Actually, we were ghetto. We never had the remotes. It was always, kid, get up, change the channel for me. That was the remote. Don't do it too quick.
So, yeah, if you do it too quick, you know what happens is that you end up with a TV with a pair of vice grips on that thing instead of the knob.
Yep. I remember that too. When you broke the plastic in the inside.
If you broke the knob off doing it too fast.
Yep.
100% had those.
Did you have
me down RCA TV for my parents, and the knob had been broken off. Not by me, thankfully, but it totally had grips for channel things, and that was my thing. Got to turn to channel 3 for some video games. Get the pliers.
That's right.
Those were the days. Well, those were the days. Kids, again, they miss out. They miss out.
So, Jim, before we got to wrap up, is there anything that you want to put out to the audience? I did pull up your website as you were talking. Anything that you really want to push?
Actually, there is something. So every year there's a Commodore event in the U.S. and it was called Convex originally, and kind of got taken over, and now it's called CRX, which is Commodore Retro Expo. And it actually is the largest gathering of Commodore people in the U.S. And we do it every year in Las Vegas. And this year we're going to do it virtually. And so if you go to crxevent.com, you can get information about it. It's going to be the last weekend of August. And I actually have got to update the website because it still shows that us being scheduled in the Las Vegas Hotel Casino at the Plaza. They've got a giant ballroom there. So yeah, you can see that's the website there. So I need to actually change that. There's information about last year. You can see some pictures of where we were last year, and it's a huge ballroom that we actually are in. And this year, I think it's going to be a lot different as far as the number of people goes. We get quite a few people that come from all over the world, literally, that come and do this. But I'm going to be presenting at Kansas Fest, which is the first time for me. It's an Apple event, Apple II. Don't boo me, everybody. Because I make work with Apple II as well. I make a wireless modem, a Wi-Fi modem that works with any kind of computer. And so it's really popular with the Apple II crowd right now. And so their Kansas Fest right now, I just got an email from them, and they have 374 people that have registered already, that have paid and registered for this event online. It's a virtual event. So I have some pretty big hope for our virtual event that we can actually really have a lot of people in our event, and from all over the world that would normally not be able to come, obviously, because of the distance and such. So it'll be a lot of fun. So check out that out. Information, if the date's correct, the location obviously is not right. It'll be information online shortly about how we're going to do that. But I think that's something I really wanted to get out there because it's going to be a great event for everybody. And last year we did a hardware project, which was phenomenal. There are two guys that come up with this. It was called the 64 Saver, and it's a cute little board shaped of a Commodore logo. And basically, it plugs into your 64 and it saves your 64 from getting destroyed. It monitors the voltage. And so if your power supply goes wacko, which is pretty common, it prevents your 64 from getting destroyed. So we had soldering stations set up at this event, and they actually built them as part of your entry, is that you got to one of these boards and you built it at the event. So we're going to do some kind of a hardware project that is done remotely. We're going to mail out to everybody ahead of the event so people can actually build them together online. And we'll have a bunch of different presentations from different people from all over the world. So it should be a lot of fun.
Awesome. And then they could stay in touch with you by going to cbmstuff.com
Correct.
to more information. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today and talking with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Glenn.
Same do, Jim. I wish I still had the color in my hair, though. I mean, man, you look good.
Sharpie can fix that.
Yeah, there you go.
Sharpie's good.
There you go. There you go.
I'm actually pretty lucky. You know, my dad actually has, he's 77. He's got dark hair still, too. It's pretty thrilled. So
Yeah, you can see what I got from my dad. So
yeah, I got lucky. So I was trying to figure out, Glenn, how long have we actually known each other?
we've known each other, God, 90? I want to say 90.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It really has. And look, I haven't chased him away, or I tracked him down. He couldn't get away. One or the other.
I'm actually remote.
Yeah. for specific reasons.
But Jim, you really are a good guy, and you're honest. And I really want to thank you for coming on the show. And again, anyone who has a machine that has a floppy drive, want to try and back up the stuff, the SuperCard Pro, it really is a really nice little device. It's not that expensive. I think it was about $199. Is that what this thing goes for?
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
can't find it in Jim's inventory, send Glenn an email because he probably has 15 of them on his shelf that he might
Very
be willing to part with, right?
Well, I will say this. Jim, again, was very kind. He, to try and keep me away, he actually, he signed mine. If that's coming up, okay, there we go.
Oh.
Oh, well, you don't want to give that one away then.
No.
Yeah, it's under my pillow every night. Kidding me?
Oh, the floppy disk fairy.
Oh. Do you guys do any kind of a contest or anything for your program at all here?
Not at the moment, no.
Don't you like draw a number or like an email or anything like that at all? Because I was going to donate a SuperCard board to your program here.
Well, that'd be great. Because we did. This will probably do better, Jim. We did try it once. It was a date with me, and for some reason, nobody did it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it
Is
just.
that when Twitter got the first negative responses? Is that
There we
Yep.
go. Yeah.
It
Yep.
just doesn't.
I unbroke the internet when that happened.
Yeah.
It went back on and just
Yeah.
left for me. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd be happy to donate a supercar board for people that are watching. I'm not sure how you guys would do that, but I'll donate.
Okay.
Do a
We can have
contest.
someone call in. We can have someone call in, like the
Yeah,
third
we can do a
caller or
trivia
something like
question.
that. Oh,
Trivia.
that's even better.
Yeah, I was
See,
gonna say, which
that's
one?
my cool. That's my cool toy. He's not just handsome. He's got good ideas.
Why don't you run a contest during the week and put it out on a video? And Glenn, that'll be good content for you to put together.
There you go.
I can do that.
Okay.
We're gonna think. What would be the question, Jim? You have a question, a trivia question that we can ask the community?
I don't know. Well, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll figure that out. Okay, we'll
Okay.
put it up on my page later. Deal.
Okay. sounds good.
Because you
Yeah.
gotta be able to stump them. Because if you just do it right here, right now,
Oh yeah, no. It's,
people are gonna, yeah.
We'll think of something.
Come on,
What
Glenn,
was the
dig
actual
deep back.
What was the actual percentage that the Amiga was faster than the Mac under emulation? No, I haven't, but how did the Amiga trounce the Mac?
And at that moment in time, we are going to wrap this up here, guys. Make sure you guys tune in. Yeah, because he's going to go down this
Only
rabbit hole.
Amiga made it possible, my friends.
He's here every Friday, guys. You can feel free to tune.
Playing all the hits.
Absolutely, guys. Make sure you tune in next Friday. Glenn, who do we have next Friday? Oh wait, we don't have a show next Friday.
Thursday.
We have it on Thursday. Yes. Yes.
Does it have
Actually,
something to do with being clean?
It's clean. Wait. Go this way.
It's clean.
We've got Mr. Bobby Vu joining us next Thursday, so make sure you guys tune in. The modding expert, dude gets into crazy, insane builds.
Oh,
And
not only that, I got to
he's gonna
tell
join
you,
us.
he was working. He's going to be showing a couple of special projects he was making
Mhm.
just for our show. It's going to be announced on our show. A few, and I've seen them, so I can't lie. But he's going to debut them next Thursday on our show.
Looking forward to it.
Same time, 6 p.m. We're just doing it a day early because of 4th of July. Everybody's going to be traveling for the weekend, so we wanted to get it on and going. But if you're not, and you just can't get enough of slapstick comedy along with arcade gaming, you can tune in to Legend Center every Wednesday, myself and P-Dubs. Here's a little taste, and we'll see you guys in the after show to talk about some MDA Jam.
Firmware update, your Pixelcade marquee will be able to work natively with the games included on the At Games Legends Ultimate, Steven. That's right. So if you have a Pixelcade marquee, it will work with the At Games Legends Ultimate on July 1st. That is the big holiday July 4th update. But it's going to be able to do a few other things, Steven, which you're going to have to wait until next week, and I'll show you that. But for right now, get hyped.
You set me up on that, because that's not what it says here on the notes.
Yeah, it does. It does.
No, it says, Steven, talk about firmware update Bluetooth headset. And I wrote no.
I swear, it's on there. It says talk about the Pixelcade.
It's so hard to find good writers. We need better writers.
Want to qualify to win a Legends Gamer or Legends Ultimate? Participate in the Summer League event, and you may be able to do just that. Current Legends Ultimate owners can participate in the 10-week Summer League event, starting June 5th, 2020, and ending August 9th, 2020. During that time, there'll be a series of weekend leaderboard events for select games each week. This is a battle to the end. Practice up, make your scores count, and top the charts once and for all, and have a beauty of a prize to show for your hard work. Have fun on the leaderboards, and good luck.